Just like Professor Ta mentioned, Borno State has done commendably well over the last few years in improving security, of course, together with the federal government. The Borno model is a model for addressing insecurity, especially the type that affects local populations. That is being spoken about not just in Nigeria but across the globe. And principally, that model was developed locally, of course, with the support of our development partners. So to that extent, I think the state deserves commendation and deserves all the support it needs in this crucial period in time. Now, having said that, the ecosystem for terrorism is one that, and I'm really happy with the topic of conversation that you picked on, resilience. Resilience of the population is the only way to defeat terrorism. So where gaps exist that can be exploited by the terrorists, they are going to exploit it. And unfortunately, that is what we saw at the moment. Counter-terrorism essentially has two components. The counter-terrorism component, which is done by the government, in this instance the federal and the state government, just like I mentioned, there is Operation Hadinkai, and then there is the Borno State model that are concurrently being implemented together, and they've been largely effective in, like the commissioner said, in degrading the terrorist group. But the other one that is also significant is anti-terrorism. That is those measures that the population can on their own take to reduce the influence and the penetration, as it were, of the terrorist groups. So as an example, a physical space, you are having an event. What kind of physical security measures would you put in place that would allow you to detect if a suicide bomber is coming to that place? The second component is what if it's a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device? What kind of measures are you going to place? It's not really the government that will do most of that. It is you, the event organizer, that will probably, in conjunction with the government, put in place those measures. So what we know at the moment, and I think Jummai mentioned it, no group as yet has taken responsibility for this particular attack.
So we're just assuming.
But well, there are what we call signatures. Every time there's an attack, there are signatures. If you are a forensic investigator, you look at those signatures. The current disposition of most analysts, including myself, is that it could be one of the two terrorist groups that are operational in that region, specifically the Jama'at al-Ahl Sunnah lil Dawati wal Jihad. In the past, it was the one that was deploying female suicide bombers. And so some of those signatures align with our knowledge of what that particular group would do. The other thing that is also an indicator is the type of bomb that was deployed, the materials that were put together for that bomb to become the explosive that it has become. I'm happy that the commissioner has said, and I have a lot of respect for the commissioner. He's someone that I've followed while he was lecturing, and of course even while he's where he is. So I'm hoping that that knowledge would also be put in place so that all of these little things that I've mentioned, like the materials, when the police, in particular the ordnance unit of the police that is on ground, they will pick up those materials, bring them to the lab, and then do an investigation and find out those signatures so that they can pinpoint where those bombs came from. It would go a long way towards preventing further attacks. Now, having said that, as you know, I run a company, and we do have an intelligence department where we keep data. What surprised us, and I'm hoping that the commissioner would corroborate this, the last time we saw an increase in the number of fatalities caused by IEDs, to the extent that we saw in Q1 2024, that is January to March, was in 2022. So in other words, we are seeing an increase in the number of IEDs that are being deployed by the two groups, terrorist groups that are active in Borno State and the Lake Chad Basin as a whole. In essence, if we had done what we were supposed to do, we should have known that this attack is potentially possible. Because when you look at the data, like I said, 2022, Q1 2022, that's the last time we saw, in particular, there were 47 incidents in 2022, while in Q1 2024, there were 48 incidents. Now, those incidents led to the death of almost about 80 persons. The last time we saw that again is in 2022. So if you've been monitoring the trend, you would have known that there is an acquisition of materials for making IEDs by this group, even though most of the IEDs, or in fact all, were road-planted IEDs. But it's very easy to move from those road-planted IEDs to suicide bombs or to VEI IEDs. The same material. The only difference is on this occasion they are putting them on a human body and they are deploying the person. So if we had taken note of that trend, it would have told us principally that it's very possible for these people to move. And groups like mine have raised that concern. We release reports monthly. We raised that kind of awareness to tell not just the Borno state government, but of course our security forces, that this is the trend we're seeing. And the essence of that trend is, as a security manager, you now ask yourself, if this is a potential threat, how do you mitigate it? Like I mentioned at the beginning of my conversation, there is counter-terrorism, then there is anti-terrorism. Anti-terrorism would mean public sensitization and awareness, where you now tell people the measures that they can take to reduce the access that these bad people would have to. And we did that in from 2014 actually, up until 2021, 22, when the prevalence of IEDs was extremely high. A lot of public awareness and sensitization was done. In fact, at that point, one of the government that was in place at that time attempted to stop women from wearing hijab, and there was a lot of public. So we need to go back to that, to have that type of public sensitization and awareness on anti-terrorism measures, so that the public would support what the government. Again, I want to conclude this statement by saying that I'm really delighted and happy with what both the Borno state government and the federal government have been able to achieve in Borno state. Let's not allow it to be reversed.